Jarle Roheim Håkonsen, Norwegian Broadcasting. I have a question. I'm here, Secretary General, right in front of you here with
right in front of me.
Madam standing beside me here.
Oh,
yes. The question is regarding Anders Fogh Rasmussen, and you say you didn't want to make more problem of a personality question when there are big problems in the world, but the Turks have said publicly and repeatedly that this is a problem, this is a case about respect and dialogue to the Muslim world. Is that an area where Fogh Rasmussen can build bridges, you think?
That is entirely, I'm not going to speak, let me use President Obama's words. There is one Secretary General, and Anders Fogh Rasmussen has been chosen and appointed by unanimity. That is a very important decision. And I think that the Président de la République and the Federal German Chancellor will agree with me. I'll say it in French, c'est le résultat qui compte. And Anders Fogh Rasmussen is an extremely capable and competent next NATO Secretary General.
C'est un homme qui a toujours respecté les droits de l'homme.
He has always abided by human rights. He is a Democrat, and there's no reason that there be any preconceived ideas about him. And I would also like to thank the city of Strasbourg and Baden-Baden and Kiel. Thank the city of Strasbourg who welcomed us with open arms. And I would like to thank all of the citizens, all of the inhabitants of this city to have put up with the disruptions that they've experienced.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Merci à vous tous.
Merci aussi.
Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, Auf Wiedersehen, the French President Nicolas Sarkozy, Jaap de Hoop Scheffer talking about his replacement. Just to bring a second of clarity to something that we thought for a split second Nicolas Sarkozy was talking about there, referring to the incoming NATO boss, Mr. Rasmussen, as being an American. That got us hitting the reference books, that got us looking at Wikipedia. He is not an American, he does not have an American passport, he's Danish through and through. He's a forthright character who believes in certain parts of domestic legislation very, very strongly. He also took part in one stage of the Tour de France. He's a fit man, he brings certain unique qualities to that job. Talking about what Barack Obama wants, Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president, there saying that what Barack Obama wants from NATO is exactly what the European countries have wanted for several years now. You might think you couldn't necessarily square those two concepts. We'll get into that in just a second. We'll take you now to another part of the summit venue, split between these three individual towns, straddling the border between France and Germany, in Baden-Baden, in Strasbourg, and in Strasbourg's sister town, Kiel. Gordon Brown there, the British Prime Minister, so much a driving force behind the G20 summit this past couple of days in London, flanked by David Miliband, his Foreign Secretary, and John Hutton, the British Defence Secretary. Gordon Brown, of course, there is added resonance for the British delegation there because the UK is so far ahead, I think it's fair to say, is so far ahead of all the other contributing countries with the exception of the United States as to what is going on inside Afghanistan, south of Kabul, in the dangerous places in Helmand province. Let's listen to what Mr. Brown has to say about what's been agreed so far.
This will return to the Afghan parliament rather than be enacted in practice. And we will look for these assurances being made a reality in the days to come. Together we faced a choice to do what is necessary to stabilize Afghanistan and Pakistan and tackle extremism, or to wait for the extremists to come to us and face a battle in the towns and cities of Europe and America. Security in London, Madrid and New York does depend on security in Kabul and Islamabad. NATO must and NATO will succeed in Afghanistan. We must show that the alliance is fit for the 21st century. The decisions we have taken today and the spirit in which burden sharing has been agreed over these next few months will help meet our commitment to the Afghan people. In return, we expect the Afghan government to meet its commitments to us. And I believe that the world depends upon NATO and our allies to work to protect us against terrorism. David, John and I will be happy to answer any questions.
If you could stand and clearly state your organisation. We'll start with Gary O'Donoghue from the BBC.
The mic's there, Gary.
Prime Minister, President Obama has talked extensively about changing his strategy in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
How exactly is our strategy going to change, and how do you persuade people at home that sending more troops into what is, after all, the most dangerous part of the world is worthwhile?
Well, first of all, our focus has been on Pakistan for some time, and I'm grateful that the American strategy does re-emphasize the importance of tackling terrorist activity in Pakistan. More than two-thirds of any plots that we discover in Britain derive from Pakistan and Al-Qaeda members who are working from there. And therefore, it's absolutely crucial that we see this as an Afghanistan and Pakistan strategy. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, we must prevent either the Taliban or Al-Qaeda taking control of what is at the moment a democratically elected Afghanistan. And that is why during this critical election period, it is absolutely essential for there to be sufficient troops there so that there is a fair election taking place and people can see that the democracy of Afghanistan is being strengthened. Now that's why we have persuaded many other countries today about the importance of this coming period, and Britain will join with other countries, America, but another 10 countries, in ensuring that these elections are carried out in a fair way that actually will commend themselves not just to the Afghanistan people but to the international community. I repeat, a democratic Afghanistan will make the streets of Britain safer.
Chris Ship, ITN.
Chris Ship, ITV News. Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, Defence Secretary. There's a big difference between sending troops in temporarily for an election and sending them in to engage with the Taliban in the way that our troops do. Is NATO still failing when it was asked for the long-term mission, as Mr Obama has been asking? And on this proposed legislation, you've spoken to President Karzai, you've raised your concerns, he's promised a review. But in terms of justifying this war back home, how damaging has that episode been?
It's absolutely essential that President Karzai makes it clear, not just to his own people but to the world, that the democratic rights of the Afghanistan people will be upheld, and that means that the liberties of individuals, particularly women, will be properly protected. And people will not accept that British soldiers are working in Afghanistan to make Afghanistan safe if the rights of women are not being properly upheld in the country. And that's why I've demanded assurances from President Karzai. He's been able to give me these assurances today that this law will be returned to Parliament, that there will be a statement from his Justice Ministry, and that it will be made clear that there is no intention to infringe the rights of women in Afghanistan. It's important also, I think, for us to persuade people around the world that if we allow terrorism to flourish in one part of the world, where we've already kicked out Al-Qaeda and have kept the Taliban out of government, then that would mean, if we allow it to flourish there, that would mean a threat in other countries and eventually a threat to Britain. So I think it's very important to understand that the next few months are important for the future of Afghanistan, and therefore for what happens in the streets of our cities, that to step up our troops for this period of time is an important thing to do. But as you know, we've already made our commitments to Afghanistan over many years, and the burden sharing that is done by other countries, both their long-term announcements and their pre-election announcements, these announcements are important for the future of Afghanistan. There has got to be proper burden sharing, and I'm satisfied today that we've made real progress with a large number of countries that weren't expected to announce, being persuaded that it's the right thing to do.
Patrick Winter of The Guardian.
Prime Minister, could you give us a sense of the scale of the commitment by Britain in terms of the temporary number of troops we're going to be sending to Afghanistan? And also, could you give us some sense of how large is the commitment being made by other NATO countries? You've mentioned there are 10 countries, but how large is that commitment?
Well, I think the right thing for me to do, and for David and John, is that we report to Parliament after Parliament returns. There will be hundreds more troops available to make sure that the elections are carried out fairly, and that will be on a temporary basis. The scale of the offer that is being made by other countries is sufficient for us to be sure that there will be more troops in every part of Afghanistan to make sure the elections are conducted fairly. And as you know, America has made a substantial commitment over the last few weeks that they will have additional troops for the period. But I think it would be best for us to report to Parliament after Parliament comes back and after we have more information available to us of what other countries are going to do in terms of the numbers. But I do believe from the figures that have been given today that these numbers are substantial.
Patrick Hennessy.
Patrick Hennessy, Sunday Telegraph. Prime Minister, could you say if President Obama has asked you, as reported, to provide 2,000 more troops from the UK permanently to reinforce our mission in Afghanistan, and what your response has been if that request has been made?
That's not correct.